Then just tell them it's for a party of 10. No, it's still just me, but I promise they won't notice on the check.
Hey.
There he is.
Oh, hey guys. We recording early this week? Usually I'm not the last one here.
No. The rest of us came a little early because we wanted to talk to you about something.
Oh, okay. Well, what did you guys want to talk about?
Well, Tom, my essay this week is on Paul Bunyan.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think I saw that.
Well, have you ever heard a Paul Bunyan story, Tom?
I mean, I guess not. No.
Yeah, so all the Paul Bunyan stories are either about how much he eats or his very freakish physical strength.
Yeah, fun. That should be a good episode. What do you guys want to talk about?
Tom, are you Paul Bunyan?
You have to tell us.
What? Yeah, of course I'm not Paul Bunyan. Don't be silly.
Tom, it's okay. We just want to know the truth, man. That's all.
They're on to us, Blue. They're on to us.
Cecil, I'm sorry, man. I know you guys were close.
I think part of me knew it all along. So much makes sense now, right?
Right, like the pancakes.
Like the pancakes. Thank you.
Pancakes.
Hello and welcome to Citation Needed, a podcast where we choose a subject, read a single article about it on Wikipedia, and pretend we're experts. Because this is the internet, and that's how it works now. I'm Heath, and I'll be your host because I'm tall. Paul Bunyan's tall. I'm tall. Anyone want to do any japes about that real quick before we start?
Nope.
Give you a second.
Nope.
Great.
It's not that you're
And
tall.
we're done. I wasn't actually giving you space for that. God damn it.
Ungenerous.
I'm joined by a guy who puts the pot in Home Depot and a guy who puts the lager in lager, Noah and Cecil.
See, Heath, you're tall, I'm high. It's the same thing, it's just that I embrace mine. Okay?
See?
And I only get active between 45 and 55 degrees Fahrenheit. That makes sense.
Important range.
Rude joke.
And we also have a guy who puts the soy in Sawyer and a guy who puts the Tom in Sawyer, Eli and Tom.
Okay. Honestly, I'm just super relieved that's the Tom Sawyer reference Heath chose to make about me, so we're all winning today.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
And I guess now I'm relieved I wasn't named Jim.
Yep,
There you
that was
go.
a good thing
Yikes.
for our podcast.
Yikes.
Or Joe.
Woof.
Yep. All right, Cecil. What person, place, thing, concept, phenomenon, or event are we going to be talking about today?
I guess I put Bunyan here twice. So Paul Bunyan.
Okay, so yeah, who was Paul Bunyan?
Is there an echo in here? What the fuck is happening?
I
Was
don't
it
know.
alternate spellings?
I
that you
don't
put it
know. I
down
don't
for?
even know how that happened.
Yeah,
I don't know how that
You
happened.
named the essay
Yeah.
Paul
How
Bunyan.
did a script
Bunyan,
fail?
Paul,
us?
so podcast listener, I must have fucked up and added a second Bunyan in here. Today, we're going to be talking about Paul Bunyan, the first spelling, an American tall tale about a lumberjack so large that he could cut down entire forests of trees with one swing of his axe. The story came out of the American logging camps and was passed down from veteran lumberjacks and wood camp workers to newer greenhorns. The stories were often told around campfires in the northern forests of the United States.
Okay, so what you're saying, though, is that Eli's citation needed essays are just carrying on a proud American tradition.
Thank you,
exactly.
Noah.
In 1916, a promotional pamphlet by the Red River Lumber Company, written by freelance writer William B. It's either Loghead or Laugheed, I don't know. He helped popularize the character to the people outside of the logging profession. And
I feel like it's Loghead then, right?
it sounds, Loghead sounds right, but it could be Laugheed. Maybe he was Scottish. I don't know. And it was this author that really gave a lot of the current characteristics to Paul Bunyan.
Yeah, if you're ever wondering how grandma got taken in by QAnon, keep in mind that her dad was pretty sure a giant and his big blue ox handled most of this country's logging. So, a little grace, everybody, a little grace.
Honestly, this is a much more wholesome and less homoerotic lumberjack hazing ritual than I would have guessed that.
Right. Yeah.
Sure.
Now, this isn't the first appearance of the Paul Bunyan legend in print. That had been traced to an issue of the Gladwin County Record. In that paper, the local news section about the area of Beaverton, quote, Paul Bunyan is getting ready while the water is high to take his drive
Now there's
out.
a third
It's a
spelling.
third
Come
spelling.
on.
I know, it's
What is
with an I. Anyway, Paul Bunyan is getting ready while the water is high to take his drive out, end quote. Now, this is probably an inside joke among loggers at the time, and not many people outside of lumberjacks would have known who this was referring to.
But I mean, I know who Paul Bunyan is, and I can't make heads or tails of it. So sure, yeah.
Yeah, right. That's fair.
Now, some scholars actually don't believe that Paul Bunyan is real folklore, because many of the stories that were in print are very different from the stories passed down through oral tradition. In fact, a lot of the Paul Bunyan tales are more like children's stories. They call this appropriation of the original story fake lore. The stories of Babe, his giant ox, and his size are fabrications by these later authors.
Okay, yeah. Doesn't it seem a little too convenient? This giant human being somehow finds the one giant blue ox in the world, and their eyes like meet across a smoke-filled room. Like, come on.
I just got to pause on the word scholars, Cecil. I mean, yeah, there's someone out there who spent like 4 years sweating a dissertation on the historicity of like the brawny paper towel guy. He's been unemployed since Bennigan's went out of business, you know. But yeah, let's use the word scholar.
Tall tales are often told as if the narrator is part of the story, and they're meant to be embellished. These stories in particular were told originally around campfires, and they would be full of lumberjack jargon. These stories were also something of a one-up game where one person would finish and the next person would start a new and more fantastic tale of Paul. Often, these tales were told of the good old days of logging, and often of a place far away and distant from the current camp.
Okay, so like Trump supporters, except in their case, the faraway place is reality. I got it.
Right, yeah.
I'm following you.
The good old days. Yeah, lumberjacks always pining away for the good old days.
Fine.
It's a tree.
You can't do a psychosexual depiction of someone working on their dissertation backstage at Bennigan's and then do a tree pun, Tom. You have to pick a lane.
Eli, that one was for you.
Oh,
Leave it to Eli to beach about that, right?
Right?
Come on.
What an ash.
I don't know what our show is. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on.
So let's first talk about the stories of Paul Bunyan. So like all good tales, Paul's story starts when he's just an infant. Paul was not pushed through the birth canal. Instead, he was delivered to the doorstep of his parents by a phalanx of 5 storks because he was so large. His parents, of course, had to feed this enormous baby, so they had to have 14 cows just to get enough milk for Paul's daily needs.
Okay, I Googled the output of a cow. That means they had a baby, drinking about 100 gallons a day of milk.
Well, to be fair, that was the food pyramid until 1998. Like we grew up with that. It was the lower left section.
It was a lot of milk. It really was.
Insane amount of milk.
They're like, and then here's your double pint schooner. A schooner?
Podcast
You
listener,
do TGI Fridays units?
if you're under the age of 40, you have no fucking idea how much we were told milk was a part of a healthy diet.
You drink it all the time.
Idea.
This pyramid
Like-
brought to you by the American Dairy Council.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah. Make a milk sandwich with your meat. Yeah. Paul's parents decided
There was famous commercials just to get milk.
Yeah.
That was a whole campaign.
There's a whole campaign to get you to hanker for a hunk of cheese, too.
Yep. Yep. Sure.
Okay, well,
fucking
some
was.
of them were reasonable and others weren't. I don't know why
I
we're
like
talking
that you're
about the
defending
cheese
one of them
ones
now. That's great.
Weird.
All right.
To bring up the cheese
Yeah.
ones, those are... Cheese is known to prevent death by any cause.
Paul's parents decided to try to hide Paul from the rest of the town. No mention why, but they did, and they built him a huge cradle. They placed this cradle off the coast of Maine. and they wave-powered this thing to rock the giant kid to sleep each night. Paul, probably pissed that his cradle was powered by clean energy, started jumping up and down in it, and he caused a 70-foot tidal wave that crashed inland and wiped away coastal towns and villages.
Okay, doesn't it feel like the townspeople should have been asking a few more questions before it got to that point, like during the construction?
It is nice when an origin story begins with a rural genocide. I rescind my wholesome comment.
Right.
I rescind it.
Sad that their hellish monster child wiped out the coast of Maine, the family moved inland to the forests and woods of Maine.
Wait. The whole family survived the tidal wave they caught?
Yeah, I think they might have
put him a few towns over.
They might have had surfboards on them. I'm not sure. While there, he took up logging and farming to help out his family. At one point, he was plowing a field with 2 large oxen. When they got to the end of the field, instead of just turning them, Paul would pick them up both at the same time with the plow and turn them around so they could plow the next row.
Okay, well, then it seems like a dick move to involve the oxen at all, right? Just push the fucking plow, you damn show off. Jesus, what work are they even doing?
Other stories talk not about Paul's size, but his speed. It was so fast he could blow out a candle, and before the room went dark, he would be in bed with the covers on.
It's relatively easy to do in the daytime.
Okay, they didn't specify.
Right.
So you're right. He also shot a bear once, and he was so impatient to see if he hit it, he ran to see. And he moved faster than the bullet, and when he got to the bear, the buckshot hit him in his own ass.
What? Okay, but wouldn't he have like knocked all that buckshot off course when he ran through it?
Probably. Maybe.
I'm saying the story doesn't add up.
Right.
The story's
You would
unraveling.
have to come around. You'd have to go around it. Yeah.
Heath, that bear, Richard Bruce Cheney. Oh, it's all coming together.
Paul grows up and eventually becomes, in some stories, 7 feet tall. In others, he towers above the treetops. He was so large that he would call in the other lumberjacks for dinner. He would knock down 60 acres of trees. Even when he talked at a normal level, he would shake the limbs from trees. Because Paul was so big and so strong, the stories also just take into the logistics of keeping him fed.
It is fucking adorable that they're telling themselves an insane story about a giant who bellows microbursts and everyone just like nods along. But then they feel the need to clarify the feeding details so it doesn't begin to seem ridiculous.
You're right. Yeah, exactly. Obviously.
Why is there a team of lumberjacks with him if he can do
Right.
that?
He's
Just
just
shout
acres
for a
by
while.
just yelling.
Paul, just shout for a while.
And then move on.
Crews of cooks would have to cook mountains of pancakes every morning just to keep Paul and the other lumberjacks in camp fed. According to one story, the flour cellar was so big, the one cook got lost and nearly starved before he was found.
I feel like he could have eaten flour.
Sure, right? Make yourself a little thing of bread.
Other stories revolved around how bad or ingenious some of these cooks were. One cook was really underqualified, or English, as he basically boiled all the food. Or as the stories put it, did most of the work with a ladle. One year, a sled full of peas fell through the ice, and from that point, he would just scoop up the lake water, boil it, and serve pea soup.
so like the playing board games with Heath of cooking. Got it. Okay.
Sure. All right, there you go.
Counts, technically.
Another story
Soup.
is about sourdough Sam. Instead of using chemical leavening like baking powder, sourdough Sam used, you guessed it, yeasted sourdough. They said he made everything except coffee out of sourdough. He kept his sourdough in barrels, and I guess he tightened the lid on one of them too much and it exploded, taking off one of his arms and legs in the process.
Okay. I think we were all rooting for that same thing to happen to one of those TikTok people during the COVID lockdown. Like, fuck you, your sourdough and your banana bread. Nobody fucking cares. It's COVID.
So mean.
Okay, tell me no one left you a
pandemic.
care package of baked goods, Heath, without telling me no one left you a care package of baked goods.
Nobody did.
The griddle they needed to feed Paul and his crew was so large you couldn't see across it when their food was cooking because it produced so much steam. They had to prepare batter in large concrete mixer drums and pour these barrels out with cranes. No mention in any of the stories of how they turned the pancakes over. A trebuchet, catapult, not sure. In any case, in order to make the pancakes, they had to oil up the griddle. So one of the cooks would strap hams to his feet and skate across the entire griddle to grease it down.
Right, to grease it down, sure. Why does it have to be pancakes, though? Why is that the only food that lumberjacks can eat in any of these stories? Also, I really think there's a lot of problems with this story. It seems like the demand for wood is unsustainable in this universe that they're describing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's like a much higher body count Clifford the Big Red Dog in a lot of ways.
Right, with an axe.
The stove was so big, they had to clear 40 acres every day just to keep it lit.
Okay, never mind. It all checks out.
No, yeah, just the shout for dinner time can take care of that. Yeah.
The cook put a loaf of bread in the stove and walked around the other side of the stove. The oven was so large that it took him so long that when he came back, the bread was cooked down to carbon. The loaves of bread were so big that they would eat just the inside of the bread and they would use the crust for a bunkhouse for the men. The donuts were so big that the crew had to carry them each on 2 large poles between 2 men. And they would also roll these gigantic donuts down the tables to get each one out of the kitchen.
All right, so here's my thing, though. Why does the food have to be bigger? Right? Like, I mean, couldn't you, like, instead of one donut that's 1,000 times that size, couldn't we just do 1,000 fucking donuts?
Yeah. Certainly would solve the sort of Sisyphean bread baking problem that we just heard about.
Absolutely not. As a man who gets sad when I'm finishing every one of my meals, the answer is bigger and more. No,
Yeah,
that
no,
is,
no, yeah.
that is the
and more.
American way. Yeah, no, you're right. You're right.
Once, a visitor came to Paul's camp and saw a bunch of men using logging sleds and rolling what appeared to be logs into a cellar of the cookhouse. When they opened the door, there was a huge cloud of steam, and then the crew rolled in another batch. When the stranger inquired as to why the camp stored logs in the cellar, the cook replied, and I quote, "Those ain't logs, mister, them sausages," end quote.
Okay. Also, what are you doing here? Fucking journalism? Why is a random stranger walking around in our area?
Well, I thought that lumber smelled delicious. It all adds up.
Where are they getting the giant intestines? You know, right.
There were a lot more ox in the beginning of the story.
Right, yeah.
I was telling you about. Yeah.
He was the one that was left. Yeah.
The bacon the men ate was served daily and came from the side of a 1,600-pound pig.
Oh, okay. Well,
The prune pits.
never mind. It all checks out.
Now I feel stupid.
Just the one?
The prune pits that the men discarded were so numerous, they had to have a team of horses remove the pits daily. The pits were so numerous that the chipmunks that ate them grew as large as tigers. The coffee grounds
Is that
were
what
also
holds
a problem.
chipmunks back from growth? Is the lack of
Pits
prune
to
pits.
eat.
Very large prune pits. Okay, but that's fucking adorable. A tiger-sized chipmunk.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want that now.
The coffee grounds were also a problem, and they had to shovel them for hours just to get them loaded onto a sled. After a bit, the crew decided it was easier just to build a new camp every month than it was to haul away the trash.
Okay, and that, Cecil, is the most American sentence ever written.
Isn't it, though?
It is. The soup kettle in the camp was so big that they automated the stirring by hooking a steamboat paddle wheel up and used that.
Okay, they can't keep doing all of this. This story has to end with Paul Bunyan getting like pushed out onto a giant ice floe to die, right? Like an ice floe called Canada, right? Really big or whatever. I don't know. How do they not kill this guy?
So you guys know if you tell Lucinda the story about a tiger-sized chipmunk, she's going to take a fucking supervillain turn on genetic engineering, right? Like, she doesn't listen to the show. We all keep this to ourselves, okay?
Right. She
Listeners?
smashes through the wall of the Supreme Court on Monkback. I'm here for your nuts.
Paul also had a gigantic ox named Babe. He found Babe during the winter, and originally the ox was white, but it was so cold and the snow so blue that it turned the ox's fur that color. Babe grew as fast as Paul. One night, Paul put the ox into the barn for the night, woke up the next day, found the entire barn is gone. So he went looking for it, and he found that the ox had grown so much in the night that the barn was just stuck on his back, almost like a nuisance as he grazed in the field.
That's funny looking.
The ox grew to become a giant. While some stories suggest that he was 7 foot tall at the horn.
Yeah, so about 2 feet bigger than a regular ox. Yeah,
Yeah, like Paul was 2 feet bigger than a normal dude. So
not
Yeah,
impressive.
right.
Yeah.
just as tall as Paul at 7 foot. Others suggest he was 7 axe handles tall, and others that his horns were 7 axe handles wide tip to tip.
Okay, that's just a weird unit.
Right?
Axe handle. Aren't they different?
I
some
mean,
of
if
them?
you're in a logging camp, Heath, it's the unit. Yeah.
Wasn't Paul Bunyan's axe enormous? I don't understand.
I kind
The
of hope
ox
not.
was-
I hope he had a regular size axe
Yeah,
that
regular-
hold between two fingers, you know?
Yeah.
The ox was not only large, but mythically strong.
Well, it would be weird if it just had regular sized ox strength, of course.
It just crumbles
Just a
down.
super weak ass ox laying on the ground. Can't even breathe.
Yeah, trying to drag itself along
Wait,
by its
what is it, a
cloven
pug?
hooves.
You wish it was a pug.
For instance, one way Paul would peel the bark from a tree was to chain the ox to the log and then grab a hold of the bark and then mush the animal forward. When it moved, it would pull the log and the bark would come right off.
Okay, I feel like whoever told that story had never seen a tree before. That's not.
I think you're right. One time he had to move a whole house, so he chained the house to the ox and pulled it where it needed to go.
No, that story's bullshit. Movers are not that competent.
Mhm.
Then he came back and he dragged the cellar to the house the next day. In another story, Paul is having a hard time navigating a road with his haul of logs, so he decides to tie a chain to each end of the rope. He ties one chain to Babe, and then he holds onto the other one, and when Babe walks, he and his ox straighten the road out and making travel much easier.
All right, now we're getting into some Spanish magical realism here. I feel like Paul's gonna ascend to heaven like Remedios the Beauty any second now. This is great.
Obviously, making a harness for the ox was something of a problem.
Yeah, okay. Story doesn't even make sense if they don't address the harness issue. Thank you. Ridiculous. How would they have done that?
Oh, well, let me tell you. So one of Paul's crew used a log slide to simultaneously kill 200 deer that were at a watering hole. And then they used the 200
Okay.
skins to make Babe's harness.
Got it.
Show that part in the cartoons, you fucking cowards.
Yeah.
Kill one giant deer. That's weird to kill 200 deer if you don't have to.
Another time, Babe and Paul were called upon to solve a log jam in the Wisconsin River. The men cut down too many trees and the entire river was just clogged. So Paul backed Babe up to where the logs were, and then he shot the ox in the ass with a 30-30. Babe mistook the bullet for flies and then started spinning his tail. He spun his tail so fast, he reversed the flow of the river, and the logs floated back upriver as well, releasing the log jam.
Oh, hey, the big, strong, giant guy is here to help us. Are you going to Oh, no, you're torturing your animal and defying God instead. Okay. Cool.
Unfortunate side note, the wind speed necessary to reverse an entire river just from blowing air across the top of the water was so intense it extinguished all life for hundreds of hilarious folksy miles.
Yeah.
Paul hired a blacksmith for his camp called Big Ol'. That's the entire name. Maybe it's a choose your own adventure. I don't know.
Okay. Feels like a slur got taken out there, right? Like for sure.
Like Heath's introduction to the episode. Right, exactly.
no, like what? You added that angle to Tom Sawyer.
Anyway. Did I? Anyway.
Well, I mean, I guess.
Anyway.
I guess Mark Twain did that.
Let's name the three things
Anyway, we're still moving on. Anyway, Big Ol' was so strong that when he hit his hammer on the anvil, you could hear it across the county. He was the only blacksmith strong enough to shoe Babe. In one story, he had to carry only 2 of Babe's shoes for a mile, and every single step he made, he sunk into the ground knee deep, and he was walking over solid rock. The ox's shoes were so heavy that every time Big Ol' changed them, he had to open up a brand new metal mine or iron mine.
Okay, so now just everybody is a giant who's super duper strong. It's 1919, people. We're dying from the flu at this point in history. The first flu is just taking us out.
Yeah, here I like to think that the Babe here was the 7-foot tall version of the ox, but just with like really enormous feet. Just fucking huge.
That's how, maybe they were just really heavy shoes, like made out of like neutron star material or something. They're like regular shoe size, you know? Paul also had a cow named Lucy, and she was so big that she provided all the camp's milk for cheese and butter.
Okay, yeah. When Paul turned vegan, they needed almonds the size of meteors to make all the milk for the coffee. Just for the coffee.
One winter, the cow ate all of the pasture, and she wandered into the spruce forest and ate it. The men used her milk as cough syrup. I don't know. Anyway, the Paul also had a dog named Elmer. And one night, thought he heard a rat in his cabin, so he threw his axe at it.
Sorry, can we circle back to the cough syrup
Yeah,
thing?
sure.
What's happening there in old
Spruce,
timey
I
times?
didn't want to interject. The spruce sap was a cough syrup thing.
Were they doing weird drug stuff? Or
I had to
sex
Google this
stuff
too.
with
Yeah.
cough syrup?
Yeah.
Spruce sap's the cough
Spruce
syrup.
sap was a cough syrup back then. So the idea being she ate all the spruce and then her milk becomes cough syrup. You can finish any Paul Bunyan story with.
Also, oxen are cloven-footed, so unlike horses, they have to have two shoes for each foot. Sorry, well, we're sharing fun facts that we didn't fit in earlier.
And they're not kosher.
Chipmunks derive from an Ojibwe word, Ojitamu, that means he who descends from the tree head first.
All right. What? No, I'm
Paul
over on your
also had a
notes
dog
and-
named Elmer. So one night he heard a rat in his cabin, so he threw an axe at it. When he woke up, he found his dog cut in two. So he sewed the dog back together. Paul did this in the dark, where he didn't notice when he sewed the two ends of the dog back together. He didn't realize that he had sewn the hind legs pointing up. And it turns out that this innovation gave the dog incredible stamina. Let me finish. He would run on two legs until he tired, and then he would flip over and run on the other two. Now, don't you feel stupid?
So sorry, did people fucking hate animals back then? Like,
Oh,
what
yes.
are these fucking stories?
Oh, yeah.
I think right when this was happening, some guy was like putting a monkey's head on backwards and putting
Exactly.
like the head of one little
Right.
puppy onto the
Right.
shoulder
Yep.
of another
Yep.
dog for no
Yeah.
reason.
Yeah. Paul had a logger in the camp with the greatest name ever, Shot Gunderson. This guy was so good at log spinning. You know when a lumberjack stands on a log in the water and he spins it for like no discernible reason? Yeah, that. Anyway, he was so good at that he could spin the log so fast they would slide right out of their bark.
Again, not trees. Maybe they're thinking of bananas. Bananas are maybe the basis of these stories.
There's got to be some reason for that spinny thing. It's like in the competitions, right?
Yeah,
like you
they
see
do. I don't know why they do it. I
Lumberjack
just-
on
yeah.
ESPN.
It's so
I
they
think
can make
it's
their
fair
they
enough.
go. They gotta make that sound, otherwise there's no reason to make that sound.
Okay.
Paul
Asked and answers.
also employed a bookkeeper named Johnny Inkslinger. He had so much writing to do that he invented a fountain pen by attaching a large hose to a barrel of ink. One year, he decided to save Paul some money by not crossing his T's or dotting his I's, and he saved Paul 9 barrels of ink or tink. I'm not sure.
Why would a large man's
Titillating.
accountant need to write more words? I don't know what the hell we're doing here anymore.
Okay, well, excuse the only Jew at the campfire for trying to include his profession, Noah. He's been sitting there for hours, listening. Wanted to get a little action in there. Fellas, I've got one. Have I ever told you? Paul Bunyan's accountant, Moishe Schwartzbaum, got him so many deductions, the government owed him money. How about that? I'm sorry I didn't kill a dog, Richard. I know you loved that one where your guy killed a dog, but that's mine.
Some of the stories are not as cute or aggrandizing.
As the one where he hurled an axe with deadly force at a random noise in the dark that turned out to be his dog.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And then taped him upside down.
In the dark. Yeah. Didn't even think that was worth wasting a candle over. Fuck this guy.
One year, Paul hadn't paid the crew, and he found out that he had no money in the camp. He quickly said that they had been cutting down government pine, and then each person, quote, thereupon seized what camp property lay nearest his hand and made off, no two men taking in the same direction. Thus, Bunyan cleared his camp without paying his men a cent for their labor, end quote.
Cool. Yeah, that one ended with Bill Maher and Drew Barrymore setting up their own mercenary logger gang right after that. Good times. More stories to come, but first, we're going to take a quick break for some apropos of nothing.
much flour can you sell me? No, I don't want the number of your wholesaler. I want to just buy it from you. Yes, I'll hold. Damn it.
Hey, Cecil, what's the matter?
Yeah, man, your face is doing that thing, it does like when I bent the fridge.
You bent the fridge?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, a whole lot, actually.
And it's this week's podcast. It's all about Paul Bunyan and Babe, the big blue ox. And I'm going to have to cook for all of them, man.
Why?
Well, isn't Eli going to manifest them in some kind of psychosexual fugue state?
I don't think so. He tends not to do things that are like
Relevant.
relevant.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Tom.
Mhm.
Besides, if you got a lot of people to cook for, why don't you just try HelloFresh?
What's HelloFresh?
It's America's #1 meal kit. Kickstart a fresh fall routine with HelloFresh. HelloFresh handles all the meal planning and shopping to deliver everything you need to cook up a tasty meal right at home. They do the hard part, and you get to take the credit.
I don't know, guys. A giant guy, an ox. They're all going to want different stuff. It's not just...
Well, when it comes to options, honestly, more is more. That's why HelloFresh's menu includes 40 recipes and over 100 add-on items to choose from every single week.
That's a lot of choice. But is it actually fresh?
It sure is. When you get HelloFresh, you know you're getting top-notch produce since it travels from the farm to your door in less than 7 days.
It's true. I became a HelloFresh customer long before they were a sponsor. They took the hassle out of cooking, and the variety means I'm never bored. That's why I, Tom Curry, personally endorse HelloFresh as a product and vow to protect their honor should it ever be questioned.
Again, you just need to do the first part, Tom.
I meant what I said.
Okay, guys.
Okay.
That sounds good, but where do I sign up?
Just go to HelloFresh.com/50citation and use the code 50citation for 50% off plus 15% off the next 2 months.
So I go to HelloFresh.com/50citation and use the code 50citation for 50% off plus 15% off for the next 2 months.
That's right.
All right. Thanks, I guess. Hey, we could just not let Eli write the ads anymore, too. I mean,
And write them ourselves? Ew.
Yeah, that sounds boring.
Absolutely not. Gross.
okay.
So, what will you do if someone questions the honor of HelloFresh?
You don't even want to know, man. You don't. You don't want to know.
That's some damn good coffee, Lefty.
Thank you, thank you.
Hey, people, tell us one about Paul Bunyan.
Oh, you want to hear one about Paul Bunyan, do you?
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, I ever tell you about his sandwiches?
Nah, B-Ball. Tell us about him. What about him?
Well, they're so big. To cut them, Paul would just lay them across the Mississippi and wait for a tugboat to split them clean through.
Yeah.
All right. But did ye know about his glasses?
No, tell us.
He made them out of church windows, and if he set them over on the sill, they'd burn down the next town over.
Too big.
One time he killed his dog.
Sorry, what?
Oh, he thought there was a mouse, and he threw an axe, and he just killed it.
What the damn hell are you talking about, man?
Let me finish. But then he sewed him back together, but he did it upside down.
This is not the format.
So then when the dog wanted to run upside down, and he had to, and then he would have to flip over to run more if he wanted to.
Now, how would that work?
That makes no sense.
No sense.
I didn't ask questions about your guys'. How would a boat cut a sandwich? Anyway, that's not how boats work. Like, why are we questioning mine?
Anybody want to switch tents tonight?
No, man, you're the one that brought the dog killer. You sleep with him.
He didn't die. He just lives a life of regret. You didn't even listen to the story.
Okay. And we're back. When we left off, we still hadn't learned anything about the family dynamic within the Bunyon family. What's next, Cecil?
Funny you should ask, Keith. Paul also had a younger brother, named Cordwood Pete. Now, this whole story is made up by one mayor trying to get some tourism in a small town of Foston, Minnesota. And it's much more recent than the old folklore of Paul Bunyan. But I thought I'd include it anyway.
So wait, so we're on now to the Paul Bunyan Apocrypha. That's what you're telling me.
Pete was much smaller than Paul. He was only 4'9". Evidently, he never had enough to eat as a child because Paul was so voracious.
That's a charming detail of malnutrition.
He followed Paul from his home state in Maine to Minnesota and took a job as a lumberjack in Paul's camp. They called him Cordwood Pete because of his size, and he was more suited to chopping cordwood for the fire than chopping down lumber.
If this was a Pixar movie, he would be the villain.
He would,
Yeah, for sure.
100% be the villain. One legend is that he borrowed his brother's axe one day and swung it. The axe was so heavy that the momentum just spun him around like a Gimli finishing move. When the axe finally stopped spinning, little Cordwood Pete had cleared 100 acres of forest. The next day, the railroad hired Pete to clear a path for the railroad, and with one swing and a lot of spinning, he leveled 50 miles of woods in a straight line. And like Thor's hammer, when Pete had to give the axe back to his brother, he's not nearly coming close to that kind of production.
I feel like I'm going to hear about how well Cordwood Pete's recovery is going in the Bunyan family Christmas card. You know those vibes? You hear that?
Hey, what's that sound? Oh, that's nothing. That's just a tiny man spinning like a axe-wielding, whirling dervish, cutting through every living thing for miles until he, winds himself down and probably vomits everywhere. But yeah, it's supposed to be cute. It's supposed to be cute.
Come to Foston, Minnesota. Yeah.
Okay, Cecil, question. Did Paul have any cousins?
Thank you, Heath. Yes, he did. Paul had a cousin named Tony Beaver.
Caliente.
These stories are a little older and appeared in a print in 1930s. Tony lived in the mountains of West Virginia, and he was 8 feet tall, and he had a pair of oxen named Hannibal and Goliath.
Story topper.
And he evidently grew melons of unusual size, like the size of a fridge.
Mice? I don't think they exist. I don't think that's real.
Guys, he also had huge nuts. Peanuts, that is. They were just giant sized, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
One year, river overflowed, and it had rained for several days, and it was going to wash away the village. Unlike Paul, who basically wiped out half of Maine and didn't give a fuck, Tony Beaver decided to help the people. He gathered the people at his peanut warehouse, and he had them carry his nuts to the river, and there everyone cracked his nuts into the water, and they started floating. Then he added barrels of molasses to the water, and the water slowed and eventually stopped, dammed up by his sticky nuts.
Hey, Cecil, buddy, my friend, when your story has sticky nuts from a guy named Beaver that dam up a river, I'm going to need you to include that factoid a bit earlier in the essay, okay? That's the kind of thing that needs time to breathe.
Yeah.
The problem was that the towns downriver were now in trouble because they didn't have this tributary to rely on for water anymore. When they came to Tony to complain about his nut blockade, he cracked a piece off of the dam and he ate it. And then he shared it with the townsfolk who partook of his nuts. And thus he invented peanut brittle.
Great day for wordplay. Just so much good wordplay that day. All right, Cecil, if you had to summarize what you've learned in one sentence, what would it be?
I only did this to tell this story because next week they're going to be teaching it as fact in Florida.
Are you ready for the quiz?
Let's do this.
All right, I got one. What is the best name for a movie about damming up the river with Tony Beaver's sticky nuts? A. Levy to Beaver.
Nice.
B. Come what may. C. The Brittle Rascal.
That's good.
Or D. I didn't make a dyke joke and I need you to congratulate me for that.
Hell yeah, you did.
Oh, they're all so good. They're all so good. I'm going to go with secret answer E, all of the above.
Oh, it is. It is E, all of the above.
All right, Cecil. The Tales of Paul Bunyan nicely dealt with the intake part of the food equation.
Oh, no.
Jesus.
Well, what do they do with the presumably enormous shits left behind? A. Well, in West Virginia, they made him senator.
A.
That's it.
Oh, see, I was
Nailed
thinking it would be secret answer B. They made it West Virginia. Yeah, but I was wrong.
All right, Cecil. Tall tales still live large in the minds of the American people. Which of the following is a real book available for sale on Amazon right now?
Yikes.
no.
Yikes.
A.
Yikes.
The Erotic Adventures of Paul Bunyan.
Okay.
B. Paul Bunyan's Mistress by Fiona Freeman.
Oh, God.
C.
What?
A Horny Raptor in King Arthur's Court.
Wait, what?
Yeah. Or D. The Way of the Shadow Wolves, The Deep State and the Hijacking of America by Steven Seagal.
I'm gonna go with A, B, and C. I can't believe D is correct. There's no way that's
all
real.
correct, Cecil. All of them.
I was actually very much aware of D. Eli, you stumped him. You are the winner.
I am. And you know what? I would like a little taste of Tom next week. A little taste of Tom.
And his
All
sticky
right.
nuts.
Don't say it like that. Well, for Cecil, Noah, Eli, and Tom, I'm Heath. Thank you for hanging out with us today. We'll be back next week, and Tom will be an expert on something else. Between now and then, you can hear us on Cognitive Dissonance, God Awful Movies, Scathing Atheist, Skeptocrat, and D&D Minus. And if you'd like to join the ranks of our beloved patrons of the arts, you can make a per-episode donation at patreon.com/citationpod. And if you'd like to get in touch with us, listen to past episodes, connect with us on social media, or take a look at the show notes, check out citationpod.com.
Hey, Cecil. Any word?
Yay, called this morning. Apologize for freaking out in the moment, but he's glad the truth is out there now.
I bet. Yeah. So what's he gonna do?
He's not sure. He said he needs time to think, and in the meantime, he's going to eat a stack of pancakes so big that I had to run a railroad over it.
I don't know what that would mean.
Me either, dude. I don't know either.
so wait. So we're on now to the Paul Bunyan Apocrypha.
Yeah.
That's what you're telling me.
The Chicago deep dish pizza of the Bunyan family, if you will.
Just leaving a nice area
I'm
to
just
cut
going to
that.
keep talking through this so there's nowhere to make a cut.
Just leaving a nice
mute my
area
track.
so
That
I
doesn't
can
even
cut.
make sense.
Call back. Call back. Chicago deep dish.
You are on a separate track, Eli Bosnick. You cannot talk for the rest of the episode, too. That's also possible.